This afternoon, I will be your host as we briefly discuss the topic of creativity in this Transformation of Self series. My name is Alex TD, and this is a look on the surface. Last week, if you'll recall, we discussed the topic of beginnings. And one thing that became clear in that conversation was the benefits of having a pause, a momentary pause in your thoughts or in your actions. And in that pause between what was happening and what will happen, there's a gap. And we talked about how powerful that space between the past and the future is within that gap. So what does this all have to do with creativity? It can be quite obvious through the work of artists. Before, there was nothing. And within that gap, before they created something, they created something within themselves. And from that, they then moved forward, speaking and doing whatever it was going to take to bring what was created within that pause to fruition. Last week we talked about living by default, where people may find themselves in that gap within the pause. And rather than taking advantage of that moment, they simply return to however it was that they were before. And so their life repeats itself. So while artists are obviously capable of taking advantage of the gap, that space within the pause, what does that mean for the rest of us? What are we to do about this? Our society has created this hamster wheel, hustle and bustle, grind, work hard type of mentality that has taken advantage and hijacked our lifestyles. So what must we do within this gap, this pause? If you don't know already, it would be important to recognize that every breathing moment is a new chance. If and when we give ourselves this chance, are we truly using it? If we are truly using it, then each of us can be as artists, deciding, contemplating, choosing what to do before moving forward without necessarily repeating the negative outcomes of the past. If we do not truly use the pause in that gap that's created, what then is the result? Life by default. It keeps us going on this habitual cycle, keeping us guessing, keeping us wondering as to why on God's blue and green earth we continue to do the same things day in, day out, without reaching or achieving that which we are wanting. Sometimes we're keeping ourselves safe. Sometimes we're simply not yet conscious of what it is that we are doing, or not yet conscious of what we are yet wanting. And that's quite all right. There's nothing wrong, and there's no shame in being there. Because it's very likely that in that space, in that cycle, you have found contentment. And that's a good thing. However, at the same time, when things are happening around us, circumstances, situations, events, things that are often viewed as happening to us, things happening against us, things getting in our way. All of these pieces are a direct correlation to a hitch in that cycle. Oftentimes, these things happen so regularly, so constantly, that it would take a fool not to notice them for as long as sometimes they go. It's like, oh, that's just something that happens. We brush it off as though that were just simply life. Not necessarily. That may be, in fact, a very light, gentle warning signal to you that something must give, that a change must be made. And those hitches in your cycle may just be the thing that you are unconsciously creating so as to give yourself a pause, to create a gap in your life. Now, sadly, oftentimes what ends up happening is these hitches go on and on and on. And that hitch grows larger and larger and larger until that hitch has become so wide and has created a gap so big that it manifests as sickness, illness, disease, heartbreak, among many other misfortunate events. What is it going to take for you and each of us to recognize when the cyclical hitch is occurring in our lives? How bad must life get before you realize a change is ready to be made? And once you realize that there needs to be a pause, how much time will you give yourselves to truly contemplate what must be done? To truly contemplate what the end result must be? within that pause are an astronomical number of possibilities, of solutions, answers, wisdom, more than what we can even count in our local solar system. So if you knew that that magnitude of possibilities existed as you came to a pause in your life, how likely would you be to explore that? Of course, with that many options, it'll seem overwhelming. However, this, connected to here, serves as some kind of magnet almost. So you're not just floating through space, so to speak, wandering, lost. When that moment is truly given to yourself, when you truly take advantage of that space, that gap, that pause, and you give yourself that chance to magnetize the solutions to you, no longer will you be left guessing. No longer will you be questioning, what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? All these anxious, silly questions get thrown out the window because they will no longer be necessary. Now, if you do find yourself in a space where you feel like you're floating out there, then perhaps asking the right questions will better magnetize the proper solutions to you. Asking better questions puts you on the same playing field as the answer or solution that you're seeking. Asking piss poor questions will only derive answers from those negative experiences with which you've already had. Oh, why do I keep doing this to myself? And so, your brain doesn't have to go far, very far at all, to find that answer. It'll just go back through your memories and say, oh, he believes he's an idiot. He says so twice a week. Just an example. So, if those are the kinds of questions and those are the kinds of answers you find yourselves getting, don't fear, there is hope. And the hope is in asking better questions. In asking better questions, higher level questions, higher quality questions, you will receive answers and wisdom in kind. It will seem almost miraculous, like you've struck gold in a way. This is what a lot of spiritual teachers and self-help gurus have been attempting to communicate when they are talking about looking within for the answers. Because they're there. You simply must give yourself truly the chance to magnetize those far out solutions and possibilities to you. Your words, your actions, or lack thereof, all of these things are contributing to what we call our lives. So perhaps then the real question is, what life are you all creating? It may seem strange, maybe even scary, but if someone were to write down or show me the habits and rituals with which they live out their daily life, almost without fail, I can show you where they will be 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, and more. Just based on what it is that they do on a daily basis. Simple example. What are you eating? Someone tells me that they're eating sodas and chips for lunches. And when they go home, they're too tired and exhausted. And so they drive through a fast food restaurant for their dinner almost daily. How long have they been doing that? I see. How much inflammation would you care to have for the rest of their life? How much toxins would you like to have stored in your body? How much fat cells would you like to accumulate? Asking better questions, most of the time people will say, well, I'd rather not. Very well then. If that's the case, take some time to contemplate a better answer. Almost invariably, their life will change, provided that they have committed to the solution, to the new possibility. And commitment will be a whole other conversation topic on its own. This brings up another good point. Many others seem to have this fear regarding failure. I recognize we become conditioned to fear failure. I'm not blind to this. Okay. However, I would strongly suggest stretching your perspectives regarding how you view failure. Failure is nothing more than a series of stepping stones with which aids you in moving forward in your life. Consider it something along the lines of a scientific experiment. Now, we've all heard the old phrasing regarding the invention of the light bulb. Try it 10, 100, 1,000 times, and we know now that to make the light bulb, it is none of those other 999 ways. Okay. In the scientific experiment, we are going through iterations of improvement. We are seeking an answer, and we have an idea of what we think that answer might be or where it might lie. And so we go through a method or a process or an activity or a habit or a new behavior or a new thought pattern. And we do that in hopes of getting closer to discovering or achieving that end result. Now, oftentimes, what doesn't get talked about is how costly scientific research is and how often the failure is. And that's all right. That's the point. They're refining the methodology, they're refining the process, perhaps even simplifying it. They're looking for nuances within other discoveries. Oftentimes, we're seeking a quick fix or a life hack or a magic pill or silver bullet or lightning in a bottle. All of these very bizarre ways of phrasing. It's okay to begin again. That was the point of saying all this. It is okay to begin again. No shame whatsoever. The only shame is in giving up and remaining where you do not want to be. That is the only shame. That being said, never forget that it is you who is responsible for the constant creation that you will one day and many days thereafter look back on what you call your lives. That'll be all for now. I thank you for your time. My name is Alex TD, and this has been A Look on the Surface.